You know Well, good afternoon, good evening, hello to everyone wherever you're watching, and welcome to Flight Simulation Association's panel discussion, Gaming and Flight Simulation. My name is Evan, I'm the co-founder of FSA. I'll be hosting today's presentation. We're going to dive in with the panel here in just a moment, but before we do, bit of exciting news. We just announced yesterday the initial schedule for Flight Sim Expo 2023 in Houston, so you can read now all about how things are going, where to book your hotel room, where Friday is going to be, our Saturday and Sunday at the museum. All those details are now available on the website flightsimexpo.com. And now is a great time, if you haven't already, to start booking your travel, because I can tell you at $89 a night and $109 a night, those hotel rooms are going to go fast. So it's a good time to make those plans. If you're flying internationally, you can save up to 10% with Delta Airlines. We'll have a discount for sure with Southwest as well, a little bit closer to the show. So all those details out at flightsimexpo.com. And of course, a big thanks to, the panelists who are here for helping us spread the word about that earlier yesterday when that news came out. So let me bring up the panel discussion now. You'll see our friends Sergio, Calum, and Giuseppe, and we're going to dive in. I'll start by giving a quick introduction to what we're doing here today. We'll let the panelists introduce themselves, and then after that, we're going to, like I said, dive right on in. This is a very interactive session, so if you have questions, comments, ideas, share those along. If you're watching on FSA, you can pop them in our Discord. You can put them on the chat via the website. If you're watching anywhere else, you have a question, post it in your chat. I know Sergio's keeping an eye on Heli Simmer's YouTube channel, Calum on FSElite, and send me an email as well, info@flightsimiassociation.com, and I will also take those questions down. We'll save most of the questions for the end, so about 45 to 50 minutes from now, we'll take all of your questions. But if you have comments, send those on through as we go. So what we're doing here today, a couple of years ago, I think it was about this time in probably 2020 when myself, Calum, and I think Sergio was on a panel discussion not too different from this one, and we were talking about what does the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator mean, and it was about a couple weeks, I think, before the platform actually dropped, so we had no idea really what we were going to be expecting. We didn't at the time know a whole lot about how Xbox was going to play out, and the conversation was all about what is this going to mean for our community, what is this big influx of people coming back going to mean for us? What's going to change when Xbox comes into the mix? Because at the time there was a bit of concern around the community. People kind of going, is this going to become like another Microsoft Flight? Is it going to be a video game? Are we going to see developers focusing too much on quantity and not enough on quality? And we didn't think that was going to be a problem. And basically, we're here to revisit that question and see how people feel things have gone 2 years later. So that's what we're doing today. Let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll dive right on in. Sergio, if we can start with you, give us a quick introduction, tell us where you are in the world, and give us a little background and history on how you got started in home flight simulation as well.
Sure thing. Thank you very much, Heaven. Hey, guys. It's very nice to be here. I am Sergio, editor and founder of helisimmer.com. I have started simming 25 plus years ago. I started with general aviation. Then I went to airliners, got really tired and fed up by airliners, started to discover the world of helicopters. And nowadays it's everything I'll fly. Like I said, I'm the founder and editor of helisim.com, a project that's been out there for 6 years, and we cover everything about helicopters. And I am in Portugal, very near Lisbon, LPPT.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that. Calum, we'll jump over to you next.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Calum from the FSElite team, and I am in wonderful England near Bristol. And I got into flight simulation basically through kind of a real passion for aviation. Very much love the idea of flying, and basically then got myself a copy of FS, I think 2000, the one with like Concorde on the front. Used a keyboard and mouse, discovered very quickly that was not a way to fly. And as I'm sure many of you know, if you're into flight simulation, that just kind of grows and grows and grows and grows. And eventually you buy all the add-ons. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there. And I'm very excited about kind of where we are at the moment with the industry and where it's heading as well. But yeah, I look forward to a very exciting conversation with my fellow panelists.
Perfect. And last but not least, Giuseppe. Oh, sorry, I think your mic might be muted. I can't hear you.
Of course, they're
There
gonna
we
start
go.
with a muted microphone, right?
Someone had to do it.
But yeah, exactly. So I'm Giuseppe. I'm from Italy. I'm the news editor at twinfinite.com, which is actually a normie gaming website. You may have read sometimes my daily flight simulator news, in which I basically go over all the add-on news for the day. There is always something. Actually, been doing that every day since the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator, without missing one. No matter the hour, the location, or whatever. Now I'm in a hotel in Tokyo because I was here for Tokyo Game Show and some interviews, and basically I started simming a long time ago on the Spectrum 48K. There was like a game by Psion. What was it? A one of the first flight simulators. It was called Flight Simulation, and that was my first flight simulator. Then I started doing like the Microsoft Flight Simulator. It was actually the competitor of the original Flight Simulator by Microsoft. So that's that like 88, something like that. It's a long time ago. I'm showing my age.
Very nice. Well, thank you for the intros, everybody. And Giuseppe, we'll stick with you and keep that going and basically just sort of launch into the panel. This was your idea, actually. You and I had this conversation the first time that we talked, and it really came down to a lot of those people in that traditional computer home flight simulation market, especially when it first got announced. So go back to 2019, before we even had any screenshots, previews, videos. People were going, is this a game? Is this a simulator? We didn't know what to expect. And there was a lot of concern that the marketplace, the Xbox, the fact that maybe we're going to see developers focusing, maybe sort of too much on that video game side of things. And are we going to lose that traditional sort of flight simulation, study level, quote unquote, type thing that we've been able to see in the past? So, you come from that, the normie side, the gaming side of this discussion. Is there a concern here? Did that actually happen? What do you think?
Personally, I don't think that happened. I think actually we are in a very good position at the moment. Like, sure, there are some pain points because, of course, there is a much bigger, a much wider audience, which means also there is a much wider pool of developers because a lot of people started developing, a lot of people like return to developing after a long time, not developing, and and when you have large numbers, there are larger numbers of bad things and larger numbers of good things. Personally, I think there are some things that certainly, when we look at them as simmers, they are a bit problematic, and we go like, okay, this probably is not very good. But I also would say that in two years after the launch of a new platform, I don't think I've ever seen so many good add-ons being launched by even new developers that's never done it before. So yeah, we have certainly some bad things, but we also have an exceptionally high number and density of good things.
Calum, what's your reaction to that? Because you and I have sort of chatted for a while about this, and there was an article that you wrote where we've seen some stuff that maybe doesn't fit that criteria. We've seen some half-baked products. We've seen some things that look like 777s on the outside and 747s on the inside, or vice versa. So, what's your reaction to that?
Well, let's kind of just take it back to the start from that initial announcement, because there's some really good points there, I think. I remember very distinctly being in the back of a car after Expo had finished that particular year, and it was announced at E3, and everyone was super excited, and there was, is this real? Is this going to be a sim? Is it going to be a game, quote unquote? And then the information dried up for a little bit, and then myself and a few other people were very honored to be invited to go and try out the sim for the first time, and it was made very clear to us at that point that this is going to be a sim. And I think having a lot of sim related people there really helped emphasize that point, and I think that was really well put across. And I think once that information started to trickle out, and actually you could see the whole world, you can go anywhere, you can adjust the weather, and the third party stuff was going to be fairly open, I think that's when kind of some perception changed. And then I think some of that perception changed again when it came out on Xbox, and we saw this influx of developers, influx of users. And I think on the whole, I know we'll get into the kind of the nitty gritty later on, but I think as a whole, I think this has been the best thing to happen in flight simulation in kind of decades, to be honest with you. The fact that this community has now seen massive growth, we've seen huge talent come through, as Giuseppe was referring to. We've seen incredible add-ons from very, very few, very unknown developers and stuff. And I think we're in for a very exciting time. But to kind of come back to your question, I think on the flip side, we are also going to see some people try and take advantage of this increased community size, and maybe those who are lesser aware of what a quality add-on should be and what it can be. But I also think as well, it's only fair that we expect that different people who have different tastes in kind of what a sim should be will have different standards of what they would expect from their add-on. And I know what you're referring to, kind of my article on Captain Sim's Frankenstein of an aircraft, the what was it, the 777 with kind of 747
and I mean, and they know
dials and
better. Like they're not new to the community. It's not like they just showed up, right? They've been around for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, they were kind of at a turning point for me at one point. They had their 757 and their 76, and these were both like okay, pretty good. I quite enjoyed flying them, and then kind of I don't know what happened, and they just started releasing stuff with weird engines, weird sound effects, and then we got an airplane without a cockpit. But again, I think depending on what you want from your sim, there is going to be something out there, and I'm sure we'll kind of talk a little bit more about third parties in kind of a little bit of a moment. But yeah, it's on the whole, I think this has been great, but also I think there's some lessons to be learned here, and obviously some discussions that we can have as a community. And I think just before I kind of sign off on this bit, I think there was some contention that this was going to be a very much a gamer versus a simmer kind of discussion. But
Yeah.
actually, I think what we're trying to get out of this is actually it can be a very inclusive environment, but I think just expectations need to be set for many people.
Yeah, I mean, somebody sort of sent me an email and they were like, why are you promoting this gaming versus flight sim thing? And we're like, no, the whole point of this is to disabuse people of that notion that it has to be one or the other, and that people should feel that our community is being invaded in some way, right? Because that exists. And Sergio, you probably more than any of the rest of us spend a lot of time in groups, Facebook discussions. So you've seen that probably more than most of us, and that has been an attitude that I think is problematic. Would you want to comment on that?
Yeah, all this situation kind of reminds me of an expression. You guys know, I have a background as a developer. I don't develop add-ons or something like that, but I'm a programmer. I'm a developer, and there's something in regards with computer security, in which we usually say, computer systems are very safe until you add a human to the equation. And it's pretty much what's happening here. It's not that Microsoft Flight Simulator is becoming a game with a lot of quotes. It's not that it's being dumbed down. It's the perspective that people have and what people start saying and start bringing to the table. I think all this situation, all this problematic, all this gaming notion that is new to the flight simulation community in some sort comes from people's minds. I think it's us as a community that are bringing this and putting this on the table. Because other than that, just like Calum said, and Giuseppe as well, I think this is one of the greatest things that happened to flight simulation in a long time, since perhaps the release of FSX, which at the time was an amazing sim, and it spurred a golden age, one of the first golden ages of flight simulation. And then things started to die down, and then we started to have other sims coming to the market. Well, not coming to the market, but improved versions of those sims. I'm not going to name any names, but we start to have improved versions of the sims coming to the market, and it kind of spurred another golden age for flight simulation. And this is another golden age in my perspective. I don't think you have anything at all to fear. I think we should embrace all this that's happening, and I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic for flight simulation as a whole.
But some people
I'd
have
just like
definitely. Yeah, go ahead, Calum.
I just want to add to Sergio's comment there about FSX being like the golden years. I mean, FSX was okay. It took a couple of, it had like 2 or 3 service patches, and then it was kind of abandoned. Yet here we are on Sim Update 10 just a few days ago, and I think, and look at kind of the quality of add-ons we've already got in 2 years, I think is remarkable in comparison to kind of the likes of FSX. And I think this is even more kind of a generational leap and more expansive than what FSX even did, even with that amazing trailer that they put out with all the ATC interacting
That was
with
phenomenal with the lady doing the ATC while she's ironing or whatever. That was great.
yeah.
I missed that stuff. So, okay, but just taking the devil's advocate position a little bit here, everyone's saying, "Well, this is so wonderful, and we've got such a, influx of people and golden age or whatever." But then, you have some developers, and there's be some people out there in the community who would say, "Well, this is making things worse for us because you have this Frankensteining of things, or because you have simplification of add-ons." So, I want to just ask a little bit about, what you think about that decision. We don't have to talk specifically about Captain Sim, but of course, they were one of the people that we all know about, and there were others as well. Do you think that this is a good business decision for them? Like, are they making the right call, and are they making money by kind of focusing maybe more on that beginner side of flight simulation? What do you guys think?
I think
I'll
they're making
start.
money for.
Oh, so good.
Okay, go ahead, Giuseppe. Go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so I'll start on this because I actually have if you like contacts that tell me who makes money and what makes money, what money they make. So I do hear a bit about that, and I can tell you that on the business side of things, uh, unfortunately for us, fortunately for them, they do make a ton of money from this kind of add-on. There is very there that's something that we may have to accept, because there is a lot of people that don't know what they're buying. Well, they do know maybe, but they're not very demanding. They maybe just want like a 777 that like looks like one to take screenshots or whatever and look good on the screen. And then if it has like a 747 flight deck, it doesn't matter to them. Or sometimes now there is like these A321, A319s from another developer that are based basically directly on the default A320 Neo. So they do put some more. I wouldn't put them on the same level as the Captain stuff, but it's still a little bit not great, because they're not like very deep add-ons. But still, I unfortunately or fortunately, depending on the point of view that you're seeing from, it is a lot of money that goes in the pockets of these developers that like make effortless, let's say less effort add-ons. That being said, I think that doesn't mean that does not remove value from the business of the developers that put a lot of efforts into their add-on, because they still have a giant pool of customers that they will buy the like large add-ons. Just look at, for instance, PMDG and Phoenix. They are selling very well and better. And this is not any secret. They've been saying this publicly. They've been selling better than what they were expecting, much better, as a matter of fact.
So you said unfortunately at one point, and then you kind of said, well, or fortunately, depending on your perspective. But others, so Sergio and Calum, whoever wants to pick this up, is it a bad thing that we have these? Because Calum, you said earlier, maybe we need some development on the sort of front end of the spectrum with those people who maybe aren't so into the study level detailed. I have to learn how to basically be an airline pilot type add-on.
Yeah, I mean, we all start somewhere, right? I mean, I started with, like I said, FS2000 with a keyboard and mouse, and eventually I kind of grew that, expanded my knowledge, and I think the same goes for kind of those particular aircraft add-ons. I mean, I saw the A319 get released a couple of days ago. Loads of people posting it on Facebook saying how much they like it because there's a smaller A320, and I totally get the argument that there are shortcuts taken in order to kind of push something out to market, but also people have to learn somewhere. And I think sometimes the likes of PMDG and the likes of Phoenix, for as amazing as those aircraft are and as kind of study level as they are, I also think they can be super overwhelming. I mean, I get there's manuals, I get there's YouTube videos, and I get there's other content creators out there who can kind of take you through literally everything that you need to know. But some people don't necessarily like those mediums or have the time to sit there and study and learn it. They just want to literally get their favorite airplane, get their favorite livery, and just take to the skies and fly around, and that's about it. And I think that's okay. I think that's purely something that we have to accept as a community and understand that some people are gonna, maybe cut you off on the runway, or might be on Vatsim, who might be a little bit annoying because they're not too familiar with everything. But we all started somewhere, and I think that just frustrates the hell out of me when I see people get so annoyed and angry at people for wanting to just try something out and experience it, because that's ultimately how I managed to kind of learn, was playing around and just kind of guessing it first, and then actually going, do you know what, this really interests me. I'm going to actually take the time now to study it, and I'm actually going to take that time to find information and ask people and join communities. And without that initial kind of, I guess, boost in the right direction or something, then I probably never would have even got into flight simulation, especially if I saw some of the comments and the way people speak to each other in kind of these forums and stuff at the minute. I think it's really difficult for a newcomer or someone who maybe only has an Xbox to really want to stay involved in flight simulation. So I think they'll come along, fly that plane, and then kind of be put off by some of the responses they get.
Yeah, Sergio, we're going to come to marketplaces in a second, but do you want to have just one last follow up on that comment?
Yeah, I think this all comes down to fear. People have fear that developers start to develop these add-ons, these simpler add-ons, and give up on developing the most advanced thing. And the Captain Sim example is actually a very good example, because one could say, okay, we do have developers, new guys coming into the market that they've never put their products out there. And all of a sudden, these guys are coming into the market and they are offering not the highest quality products, but it's products that are nice. They are good for some of these guys that just want something that resembles a fighter with the missiles pointing backwards, for example, stuff like that. But that's okay. But the thing is, and I think it was you, Calum, that just said a few minutes ago, Captain Sim did it. Some guys that were already in the market, it's not like, okay, these new guys that are coming to the market, they wouldn't do a very complex aircraft, and instead they are doing these simpler aircraft and they are selling something. Okay, so you have someone new in the market that's doing simple stuff. You're not losing a good developer that makes complex aircraft. I think Captain Sim even increased that fear that people have, that all of a sudden we are going to have add-ons that are very simplistic and very wrong. And I think that's one of the concerns that the community has. The other concern that the community has, I think it doesn't have to do with add-ons. I have seen a lot of these conversations on social media and on Facebook groups and whatnot. And the behavior, people get very triggered by the behavior of other guys, because let me take a step back. Microsoft Flight Simulator has one of the best, it's probably the best multiplayer system in all sims out there, with the exception of the ones that we play on mobile devices. Okay, so you get into the sim and you are immediately flying with people from all around the world that are flying the same area that you are, and that is very cool. But at the same time, for guys that are taking their simulation more seriously, they still want to see those other aircraft from other players, but all of a sudden they are going to land and a guy just spawns on the runway, which is something that people can't do on Iveo or Vatsim or something like that. And they immediately associate that kind of behavior to a gamer. And a lot of the times they start saying that it's probably a guy that uses Xbox. So people's behavior inside the multiplayer system also helps raising this barrier and raising these kind of weird and very toxic feelings towards others. And all of a sudden they are not gamers, they are simmers. I don't think a lot of these guys do this, on purpose. They just and I'm guilty of doing this. I'm just trying a helicopter, and all of a sudden I forgot to place a helicopter on a parking spot, or I just placed it on the runway because I wanted to be there with the engines running, which, as you guys know, Microsoft Flight Simulator does not allow you to start on a parking position with the engines running. I just want to get the engines running and start flying immediately because I just want to test. I already know the helicopter. I just want to test the flight dynamics. And all of a sudden, I'm popping up in the middle of the runway, and perhaps some poor guy is trying to land, and I'm there. And very often, most of the times, I remember to just turn off multiplayer. But when I don't, I'll be annoying someone for sure. Because I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of the fear for the tone down of add-ons, but also the, I wouldn't say it's fear, but the bad feelings that people have towards the behavior of other players online as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we made it 24 minutes before he started talking about helicopters. That's the first time
Well, that's
that he
true,
brought
right?
them up. So that's pretty good. That might be a record. And I'm bringing
Well,
in.
if I'm saying I'm flying, that's the only thing I fly anyway.
I
So
know. But someone's gonna make fun of me for it. Bringing in
Uh,
the
I know.
one
FSA.
thing,
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Yeah.
sorry, one thing I would want to add, like when I was saying unfortunately, I didn't mean like that's unfortunate that people make it that kind of that I don't, because personally, and I think that's it, how we should look at it. As long as a developer makes an add-on and correctly identifies to the public what an add-on is, they can sell whatever they want, because they're not tricking people into buying a 777 without it, with the wrong copy telling you it's this super realistic simulation of a 777 or a 777 or whatever. The problem, what I personally would like, because that kind of like what Calum was calling the Frankenstein, they kind of like stop you at a certain level. They are not, according to me, encouraging you to get deeper into the simulation. So I would like to see more, like even simpler add-ons that do encourage you to like get deeper. Like for instance, it's free. The A32NX, like it started quite simple, but they added to it and more and more and more. So I know a lot of people that started with the A32NX when it was very basic, and then they started piling on systems, and those people now are very accomplished simmers because they learned alongside the A32 and the evolution of the A32NX. That's the kind of add-ons. Even if it starts simple, that's what I would like to see. Something that actually kind of accompanies you and encourages you to get deeper into the simulation aspect, which is something that you don't always see.
For sure. I'm
I
just bringing
think
in the FSA chat now, so folks, if you want to contribute, share comments, share your thoughts, that is there. You can access it on our website, flightsimassociation.com/webinars, and it's integrated with our Discord. So if you're part of our Discord, you can chat along in there as well. And I think that's an excellent segue into our next question, which talks about marketplaces and add-ons. So Sergio, we'll go to you first, and Calum, I thought you had a follow-up, so you can definitely jump in with that as well. But we wanted to just ask, since we're talking about add-ons, and some are better, some are worse, should marketplaces, and we're not just talking about the Microsoft one, but you could say this about SimMarket or Xplane.org or the new Xplane.to maybe now, should they be evaluating the merits of certain products, and perhaps they should be actually policing this kind of thing and saying, this is a good add-on, we're going to allow this one in. This one is, just a Frankenstein add-on, we're not going to allow that. Is that something that we should see?
That's a very interesting question, because it's a very complex problem. But I think there may be a few solutions out there. I think it would be impossible for companies behind those marketplaces to evaluate all of the products and give them their own rating and let people know what they're all about. But I think the community can pitch in on this. Some of these marketplaces have, like for example, the Microsoft one has the star rating, which I think it's quite poor. Just giving 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 stars doesn't say anything about a product. I think that for people to be able to rate the product, they should also be forced to say why is it that they like the product or don't like the product, so that people, because here's the thing, someone may not like a certain product and you give it 2 or 3 stars because the flaps on an airliner are not exactly modeled like the real one, which can be irrelevant to another guy. For example, Calum couldn't care less, for example, about the flaps or about the fact that the flaps they have a few centimeters less or something like that, but Giuseppe could find it really, a deal breaker for him for some weird reason. For me, it would be a deal breaker, for example, knowing that 737 doesn't have a rotor. So that for me right there would be disastrous. But I think that these rating systems should be improved. And there's something that other marketplaces not related with flight simulation directly. They do sell flight simulators, but they're not related to flight simulation. They have this very cool system of curators, people that for some reason are respected in the community, and they provide their input on the products that they try. So this could be an interesting solution as well. These guys are volunteers that accept this. They have no obligation. They may get some of these products for free for them to try out and say something. Very often they don't. They just buy and just do the same that everyone else does. They provide a rating and provide some comments, but their comments and their rating it's special when compared with the other ones. Also, I would like to see a way of rating the ratings. What I mean is, whenever I see someone rating a product and providing a comment, I would like to upvote or downvote that comment, so that only those guys that have a higher amount of upvotes, those were the ones that would be more visible. This is all about the community. The products are for the community. They are being sold to the community. They are targeted at the community. And I think that more than the companies themselves, I think the community can do something. I would love to see such a system. I would love to see some of these things implemented on several marketplaces, because I think it would increase the trust of the users. It would increase the trust of the developers as well, because they would know that some respected guys were talking about their products. We see that with, for example, FSElite and other websites, in which people review those products, and they are folks that we in the community respect. And they are honest, they are unbiased, they provide their information, they provide their opinions, and we value those opinions. And I don't like to use these words, but the community ends up being influenced by what they say. I think that should carry on to the marketplaces as well. I don't think it's very hard to do it. It's just a matter of these places, of these companies, having the will and work with the community to get these tools ready for us to be able to use them right away.
Yeah, I think actually I would like to underline what Sergio said. Like, is this comment helpful that you see on Amazon? For instance, but this is actually a pretty good fail-safe for this, because unfortunately there is also one thing that some marketplace kind of weigh more the fact that they want add-ons to sell, so they don't really care if for instance there are fake reviews, because I'm pretty sure you guys have seen fake reviews in various marketplaces, and I'm not going to name it, but there is a marketplace that kind of encourages them. I as a reviewer, I know for a fact that, for instance, on a certain marketplace, reviews from a free copy are counted exactly like all the other reviews, and they don't have any indication that the copy was free. So basically, a developer could easily, and that's what they do, give 5, 6, 7 copies of their add-on to friends, and then those friends put like super positive, oh, this is the best airport ever, and you look at it and it's not so great. So there is this thing that marketplace should get over, the idea of trying to sell at all costs, and instead trying to build trust with the community. Of course, it's difficult to convince them to do so.
Todd B in the FSA chat says he's going to name the marketplace. He's thinking you're talking about Amazon. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But it's just like, he's going to do it. He says it's Amazon. And he may be right. Although, fortunately, we don't have flight sim add-ons, too many flight sim add-ons on Amazon just yet. But maybe it's coming.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be the next little subgenre of the Amazon marketplace is flight sim add-ons. Calum, did you have a follow-up on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just to kind of like answer your kind of original question, which I'm sure the other two had kind of alluded to, is I don't think marketplaces should be policing products. I just, firstly, I don't think it's feasible. I don't know how they can possibly sit there and go, well, this is good or this is bad, because that's not their job. Their job is to kind of distribute a product to the community, and then it's kind of up to people like myself, Giuseppe, Sergio, and other people in the media, the community, to kind of police and kind of trust judgment and the star ratings and all this kind of stuff that we have. So I don't think that any marketplace should be policing it. I think there should definitely be some more ways for people to judge the quality and maybe kind of give an opinion. And I think as well, it might be also just kind of thinking back to this whole Frankenstein thing and different types of add-ons, just for the marketplaces to maybe allow developers to give a little bit more flexibility in how they showcase their stuff and market it. So for example, if Captain Sim decided to sell through another marketplace, that maybe they tick a box to say this is actually more geared towards a casual simmer or gamer or whoever. And PMDG can tick the other box and say this is more of a high fidelity study level type of thing. I think something like that might be quite interesting and useful to have. But I think the biggest dilemma with all of this is it's all very subjective. It's very difficult to pin down exactly what could be a study level product. I mean, we've spoken a lot about airplanes, but obviously there's like utility things out there as well, which I've just been playing with Parallel 42's Camp Out after reading your review, Sergio, and seeing all of that. And that to me is, we had a quick discussion beforehand, but that to me is not necessarily like a simmy type of thing. That it does feel a bit more gamey because I'm kind of creating my own little environment and stuff and then fly into it. And I think it's super cool. I really, really like it. But it's so different to kind of any other type of add-on we've had before. It's certainly no airport, and it's not like a generic weather engine or anything like that. So I think it's really difficult to pinpoint down exactly what an add-on is and what it shouldn't be, because I guess if we were policing marketplaces, something like Camp Out probably wouldn't enter any of the marketplaces because it's not an airplane and it's not an airport. So yeah, stuff like that I think is really interesting. I mean, we've seen a huge uptake in like mission type of products as well throughout all of the marketplaces. And again, they don't necessarily appeal to me as a flight simmer. I like to fly A to B. That's just kind of what I do. But for some people, they enjoy the challenge of landing into those at different airports and kind of racking up those high scores. I mean, we've seen it in Discords and on communities and stuff, trying to outbeat one another on those landing challenges. So yeah, I think just maybe the marketplaces could do a little bit more to disclose what type of product and maybe kind of the target audience that they're trying to aim for in their own circumstances.
What about, I mean, there's some marketplaces that say that they kind of curate the list a little bit, so they only maybe work with certain partners, or they try to do a little bit of this. It's not necessarily policing, but you can imagine that they might not allow certain products in. So what if it wasn't like a gatekeeping system, but it's more of like, well, we're just going to try and give you a certain take on flight simulation. What do you guys think about that?
And those
I think it
marketplaces
works
are
for some.
smaller. Like normally they are more curated, so they have less products to look at. So of course you can't really feasibly ask Microsoft to give the same attention to what a product is for each product than you can expect from an Orbix that like has a lot less products. But still, like every marketplace, as a reviewer of all kinds of flight simulator products, I think all marketplaces. I don't know any marketplace that doesn't have any products that I think are subpar, because it's not a matter of like policing the quality. It's more a matter of like, you know, business opportunities, and sometimes they're friends. Sometimes there is no marketplace out there that doesn't have any product that I wouldn't consider subpar. Well, ultimately, no one is completely innocent. Let's just say, but yeah, those smaller marketplaces, of course, they can do a little bit more curation because they have less products to churn through. If you look at Microsoft's marketplace, for instance, they're already behind a lot. They are like there is like a month or more,
Yeah.
like waiting for publishing of a product, so they can't really do more than that.
I think the biggest dilemma that any developer faces with any of these marketplaces, whether they're curated or whether they're big behemoths, is after, like, especially as we were talking about earlier about all these developers releasing stuff all of the time, you could release a product on Monday, and by Friday you're completely off the front page. And that goes the same with kind of all the content that we write as well. I want to see these marketplaces do more, like way more, to earn their commission cut from these developers in order to promote products. And I think this also comes back to the quality stuff, because if a marketplace is seeing X amount of reviews that are 5-star and all these amazing comments and stuff, then they should be featured on that front page. They've kind of earned that right to kind of be there and have as much exposure as possible and help support those developers. And I think I can't name names, but I know that some high profile developers have seen lackluster sales because they kind of just get lost in kind of all this noise of all this other stuff. And it's kind of shocking, but also sad to see some of these developers struggle in an environment where actually they should be really thriving, because their stuff is top notch, and it just gets lost because it's buried in, like, you see the weekly releases on the marketplace. I think last week, I know it kind of skipped a week, but there were like 40 odd releases or something, and some of those airports are just going to be forgotten about like the next day. So I'd like to see a lot more marketplaces, big or small, really supporting that kind of approach, and also maybe even just recommending stuff to people. So if you bought a particular airport, what other airports or aircraft kind of relate to that particular one? That might just kind of help diversify things a little bit, and also help simmers just expand their minds a little bit about what they want to fly or get involved with. I mean, I personally had a bit of burnout from flight simulation because I was just bored of doing the same stuff, and it just took a little bit of inspiration to kind of reignite that flame and get involved with some other stuff. And I think marketplaces could do a lot more to help reinvigorate people and get involved in different types of flying, which may also help with some of this toxicity that we've kind of touched upon as well.
So I want to talk. Sorry, yeah, quick follow up, and then I want to jump on to consoles.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Discoverability is a very big thing in marketplaces, and actually, that I hope that they talked about like evolving the official marketplace further. I hope that actually the official marketplace takes a lot of inspiration from the Xbox marketplace, because Xbox marketplace is extremely good for discoverability, and I've talked with many like indie developers that make normal games, talking really positively about the discoverability for their games on the Xbox marketplace. So I really hope that Microsoft actually takes more inspiration from what they're doing with discoverability in their normal Xbox marketplace.
Perfect. Well,
they have the know-how and the tools. They have the know-how and the tools, right? They are the guys that have the Xbox marketplace and have been helping companies with their e-commerce systems for so long. They are experts in business intelligence. They have a lot of data. They could have more data, and I think that involving the community in gathering that data would help a lot. And I agree with Calum. I don't like the marketplace. I think it's a mess. It's chaos. You have a few products that were released recently, and you have to dig really, really, really deep and actually spend and waste a lot of time to find something that you can find find interesting. It's very weird. So I think that they have a lot there that they need to take a look at as well. Evan, I would just like to pick up something that Calum said about Parallel 42, and about the fact that it's not Parallel 42 is not so much something for us to sim, and it is connected directly with the gaming versus simulation thing, which is something that it's something that I've been saying for a long time, for many years, and people don't really like when I say this, but we flight simmers are actually role players. This is a role playing game for a lot of us, because we are playing the role of a pilot. We are pretending to be. I know a lot of the guys out there use this for training, etc. It's not, but most of us are not. I'm not using this for pilot training. I'm using this because I like aviation and I like to virtually fly. And when I'm doing it, I'm role playing the role of a pilot. And I think Parallel 42 just, it's something that just increases that experience, adds to that experience of role playing. I can pick up a bush plane or a helicopter or something like that, land somewhere, get my camping site there and go fly somewhere else. You can even do some other things. I'm not going to advertise the product here, but you can actually do some other things very cool in multiplayer with other guys. So I think we need more of these tools, exactly to prevent what happened to you, this burnout, this being tired of doing the same thing over and over and over again. I know how it is. I've been through that for a long time, many times. So just wanted to add that, just to add a bit of wood into the fire.
Somebody should just make a headline that says Sergio says Flight Sim is an RPG and leave it at that and don't give any other context. And then we'll see what happens to you.
When there is like a big forum discussion about like people calling, "Oh, you dirty gamers," and I was like, "Yeah, you're a gamer too. You do your pilot role play." So me and Sergio are pretty much exactly on the same wavelength of this one.
And it's not a bad thing. It's not. I'm not saying this to bash. No, it's not. It's not a bad thing. It's good. It's healthy. It's a hobby.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's our
fun.
Passion. I've been doing it for years. I'm pretty happy being a role-playing pilot. I pretend to be a pilot. I'm not a pilot. Exactly. That's not a bad thing, guys. Just embrace it.
Calum,
my father was a real pilot, and he hates my pilot role play.
Calum, any follow-up to that? Since you had a nice reaction when he said that the first time. Anything you want to comment on before we jump on to the next question?
Not particularly anything more than I've already said. I think Sergio's right. I think we are all just pretending to fly our planes on my joystick or whatever. I mean, the only real pilot here is you, Evan. So, but yet you still flight sim. So
yeah, I know. Exactly. And then, of course, like I'm on the air traffic control side, which, as Sergio says, is just a role-playing thing because I do nothing about that whatsoever in real life. So, yeah, can't disagree when you put that definition on it for sure. So let's talk about basically what we can do to help. And we've kind of come to this consensus, it sounds like, that whether you think maybe more on the game side or the flight sim side, it really doesn't matter. And that we have a nice on-ramp for people now with the Xbox side of things. If they want to become a little bit more sort of, we'll say the word serious, they could obviously move into the computer side of things if they wanted to. There's mobile flight simulation now. So how do we help those people sort of make that transition, whether they come in as a traditional gamer or they might be a real pilot but they've never simmed before? They're very similar in terms of their knowledge of flight simulation. What are we doing as a community to help those who might want to take it more seriously, who might want to use it as a learning opportunity, actually get into it? And Calum, we'll start with you on this one.
It's tough. I mean, I'm really conflicted because I think the truth of the matter is I don't think we're doing enough, to be quite honest. My experience is more kind of in the simulation realm, but I am also very much open to the fact that a lot of people are coming from the gamer side, shall we say. They've picked up an Xbox Series S for £250 or however much they're going for today, and literally the accessibility of it today is just remarkable. And as I was saying earlier, people will just fly what they are interested in and hope for the best and hope that they pick something up enough to want to take whatever experience they had and kind of turn it into, I guess, a little bit more seriously and actually go into that level of depth. I think the best thing that we can do is be more supportive as a community. So if we see that Xbox user come online onto a Discord or into a Facebook group or whatever, and they may ask a question you think is silly or you've seen like a billion times before, just answer it and be friendly about it and just accept that someone somewhere is just really, really interested in flight simulation or aviation and just needs that helping hand, that guiding, just something to guide them in the first place. I mean, I think FSElite is a great resource for flight simulation news. I think helisimmer.com is a great resource for helicopter news. I think Twinfinite's a great resource if you love video games and also want to learn about flight simulation, because I know Giuseppe works really hard on kind of getting that daily stuff all the time from everywhere and anywhere. And I think collectively reading all of that stuff will help you kind of see what's out there and hopefully expand your knowledge and what's out there. But also, I think watching content creators, I think going to Flight Simulation Association, Evan, is a great place to begin and learn about all these resources and going to expos and other events and stuff. But I think the primary thing we can do is just to answer questions openly and just remember that we all started somewhere and not all of us are experts. I'm no expert. I ask questions all the time. I mess up and, you know, sacrilege, but I fly with an Xbox controller sometimes. And do you know why? Because it's just so much easier.
Oh my God.
I am just, if I want to mess around with my friends and just fly around kind of the continent or whatever, I am just sat here with my Xbox controller because it's just easier and I enjoy it because I'm there for the community side of things. I have all the hardware and stuff and I use it sometimes, sure, but it's just, to me, it's about having fun at the same time as having that bit of education as well.
Yeah, and of course, you know, I know lots of pilots that I fly with who are in that same boat where they're not going to go out and spend $3,000 on a computer, but they tell me that they fly on Xbox because they've got an Xbox already, they use it for other games, and hey, I'm a pilot, let me try this out, and they've done the fly over your house thing, and they think it's cool, right? So there's definitely that full-on spectrum. Sergio, Giuseppe, what else do you think, you know, we are doing, or what more could we be doing to help those who want to get into this more seriously, no matter where they're coming from, gaming, real-world aviation, new to flight sim altogether? You know, what do you think we could be doing?
I think we need
Ultimately,
to
but
I think we need to learn how to listen. Communities don't listen. People in most communities are, you know, so eager to just say things that they don't listen to others. Here's the scenario: someone has an Xbox, got Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I know it's pretty easy nowadays to just, you know, grab your phone and ask something on Facebook groups, and we see that more often than not. I get triggered when I see simple questions asked on Facebook when someone could just write it on Google and get an immediate response. Yeah, so I understand that, but someone has gone through the trouble of getting Microsoft Flight Simulator, waiting 4 days for it to install it on his Xbox, tried the sim, going to a Facebook group, ask questions there, and wait for your answers. You know, it's not someone that just install the game in 5 minutes and start shooting at stuff left and right and just went, oh, how do I kill boss? No, the person that is on your Facebook group or forum or wherever asking these questions went through this process. So this person is interested, right? So I think that the least we can do, even if the question is stupid, and the question is not stupid because the person is playing on an Xbox. The question is stupid because the person is new in the simming world, and that happened to all of us. I was just before we started the panel. I was exchanging a couple of messages with someone that I'm helping, and that person has bought an Xbox and has bought some hardware to connect to the Xbox. I went through the trouble of looking and finding what's compatible with the Xbox for that person to use, so that that person could give the Xbox and the hardware and the sim to his son, to her son this Christmas, because the kid wants to be a pilot. And the family cannot afford a 3 or 3.5K computer or something like that. So they bought an Xbox, they bought some hardware. The kid wants to be a pilot. The person was telling me that, you know, they spend a lot of time on their local airfield talking to pilots and whatnot. If that kid comes to a Facebook group and asks stupid questions, and I'm not saying he's stupid, you know, but questions may be stupid or at least very simple. Are we going to turn that kid away and start bashing him and tell him to go away, go play, with his Xbox, go shoot something with his Xbox? We need to start listening. We need to start to understand the process behind the process that those persons that are asking those questions have gone through to get to where they are right now when they are doing that question. If they did that question they probably already did all this. So we need to, first of all, we need to start listening and need to start answering. Just like Callum said, we need to start giving them answers and telling them and helping them as much as possible. We never know when one of these kids eventually turns up to be a pilot. And we could, this is very interesting because we could literally be preventing a kid from getting into a career as a pilot by not
Or a game
providing
developer for that matter, or a flightsman
or a
developer. I
game
mean,
developer.
how many
Yeah,
flightsman developers do we have in the community who started just like the rest of us did as regular simmers? Like, no one's
exactly.
coming in here as a professional game developer saying I want to build for flight sim. Almost everybody is a flight simmer who just started to code on the side, right?
That kid could be the founder of the next PMDG, and we
Yeah,
need a new blood.
yeah.
We need a new blood. PMDG is not going to last forever, or for a long time, unless it manages to refresh their developer pool. Those guys aren't young; they aren't 18 years old, right? I'm not saying they are going to retire tomorrow, but the younger crowd that's coming into the flight simulation are the guys that are going to do something in the future. Not all of them, but a few are. So it's taking care of the youth of the new guys coming into the community is also a way of us taking care of the community itself and allowing it to grow and expand in the future.
There is also a misconception that I see a lot, like especially between certain parts of the flight sim community that have never been gamers, that have never had like much of a contact with like the gaming at large, which they think like gamers, people that play on Xbox, they play only shooters, or they play only simple game. They're not used to the complexity of the simulator. Uh, there is a giant variety of games and simulators already on consoles. Flight Simulator is not the first. They have like train simulators, they have car simulators, racing simulators. They even have like strategy games that are like really really complex. Like if you look at Paradox's strategy games like Crusader Kings 3 or whatever, they are some of the most complex games that you can think of, and it's like even more complex than flying a study level airliner. So it's not like Xbox gamers or players or owners are necessarily unprepared to the complexity or even uninterested in the complexity. There are a lot of people that are interested in the challenge that the complexity brings because they already play other games and other software that has exactly the same complexity or even more. So we should try to look beyond the stereotypes, because I think many of the new gamers, the new simmers that come from Xbox, come from a background of playing games that are challenging and complex and comparable to flight simulators in terms of complexity, because that's what they like. So if we remove the stereotype, we can see that many of those players, many of those perspective simmers are not that different from us veteran simmers in any way.
I'm sure you got some more follow up. I want to just share a couple comments that have come through. And by the way, chat, thank you for all the great comments and questions and stuff that's been sending through. Now is a good time. We're just about to move into the live Q&A. So if you have questions for the panel, anything you want us to address about gaming, flight simulation, Xbox, anything really at all, we are more than happy to answer those. So please send those questions either through the chat, send them to me at info@flightsimassociation.com, send them through the website, and we'll be happy to answer them with you. And fair warning, if you don't send in any more questions, all I'm going to do is ask the questions for Sergio, and they're all about helicopters. So the rest of us are going to be bored. So we need some questions that are available for other people as well, because as usual, he's the most popular person. And there's Andy in the chat right now going, darn, I'm on helisimmer.com looking at a hardware collective review. Come on, guys, there's other things than helicopters. We should have done like an airplanes versus helicopters panel maybe. A couple other comments from Dreams of Wings over on the Helisimmer YouTube channel. Very interesting time in communities, because I think we're seeing a broad spectrum of experience and knowledge, and that's that's never a bad thing. So that's really, great point. Ivan Sky earlier on from the same thing as we were talking about role-playing games, saying that it's a really nuanced difference that, real-life aircraft can be used for gaming and competitions and things like that as well. So I thought I would just share that. Sebastian had a great point earlier. I've got to go scroll up to find it, but basically said Xbox is a very affordable way, and there's no reason to feel like they're less simmers than the rest of us are. And he says we are all simmers no matter how we got to be here. And I think that's a great point as well. And then one more just a few minutes ago from Robert Allison that I thought was just really interesting, and all these are all good comments. But Robert goes, after a console with a joystick on after all, a console with a joystick on a 50-inch TV in the lounge must be quite immersive and a better setup than when he started back on FS95 on a 15-inch monitor in 1996, right? So all great points for us to talk about here, and thanks for the commentary on the chat. I'm going to start asking helicopter questions.
I started on an 8-inch monitor in black and white.
Right. So that's exactly it. So any other questions, guys? Send those all through. Otherwise, we're going to have to ask Sergio some helicopter ones. Have you guys?
That's a threat.
I know,
that is a threat,
exactly.
folks.
We can, Sergio, if people do want to ask you helicopter stuff, because I don't want to necessarily get into your entire helicopter world of experience here, but if they did want to ask you some questions, where's a good place for them to do those questions more specific to helicopters in your experience?
Yeah, just drop by our Facebook group. It's called Helicopter Flight Simulation, or shoot me an email, sergio@helisimmer.com, and I'll be more than happy to help you with anything that I can.
Perfect. So we'll probably start to wrap up as they're just kind of go through some last thoughts, some concluding thoughts from anybody, or anything that the panelists sort of wanted to contribute as a thought before we go here. Anything that you guys want to do before we kind of wrap up? I think we didn't cover.
I'm very curious. This is more of a question to you, Giuseppe. I mean, obviously, you're very much in the games industry because you're in Japan at the minute, aren't you, with like TGS and stuff? Is there like a perception of what flight simulation community is like amongst gamers? Because I know what we have as our perception of gamers from a flight simulation community. I'm just curious as to kind of what the other side of that spectrum is.
I don't think most gamers are aware that there is a flight simulator community, and they actually impact with it whenever they go. For instance, on the official flight simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator forum, they impact against the community, and that impact is not always gentle. So that's where they form. That's actually what we should be careful about, because many times our community as flight simulator, I'm kind of in the middle because I'm part of both communities. Like our community as flight simmers does not give the best image of itself to gamers when gamers come to us to ask us questions or just to interact, because we look like sometimes really reactionary and very like unwelcoming sometimes. So yeah, but we already talked about it a lot. Those gamers I've talked to that they had an impact with the flight simulator community, sometimes it's fine, and sometimes it's really not so bad that they like just give up like flight simming as a whole. So far I never met actually anyone that was like so turned off. I would say no, flight sim is not for me, but I've seen some pretty negative experiences, certainly, especially not helped by the official forums, because those are sometimes very, very unwelcoming. There is like the kind of war zone. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but the official forums are really war zone. So sometimes I think a lot could be done to like moderate them a little better. But I think the perception can be improved by us. We are the ones that need to improve the perception of the flight sim community among the gaming community by being more welcoming. That's the whole point.
It's very interesting to see that, since I know because I've been playing other types of titles as well, including shooters, and there are some really toxic communities in the gaming gaming community, and even those guys think the flight simulation community is toxic. That goes to show
kind of true.
That goes to show how elitist sometimes this community can be. That's the thing. It's really weird.
What I find even more weird is when you go to these shows and stuff, that everyone is totally not what they're like.
Yeah.
Like some people are online, right? Like everyone is super friendly. Everyone is very welcoming and inquisitive, and like I haven't been to a sim show in a couple of years because of that thing called COVID. But
pandemic,
like even the youngest people who were like super interested, they were just having a go, and I've never seen like so much help given to people. Like you've got people, old people, just kind of helping out and getting involved and stuff, and that to me is the sort of community I'd love to see a lot more of online.
It's the online factor.
And that's exactly it. Yeah.
Like offline, everyone's nice. When you get in front of the monitor, everyone is devil.
No, I think that's a great point, Calum, and that was something that came up a few times at the show in 2021, even, and certainly was my experience as well. Was just it's a totally different experience. This whole discussion that you sometimes see online about gaming versus sim, or this simulator versus that simulator, that's just not there at all at the in-person experience. We never have those conversations. People are just super thrilled that we're all sharing this passion for this thing that we all love. So if we could bring that offline experience a little bit more online, I think that would all be a really nice thing for us. I've got a couple of questions that have come in here in the last couple minutes. Ivan Skyoff of the helisimmer.com YouTube channel asking us if we can speak to the role of simulators for people with special needs who couldn't medically qualify to become pilots in real life. I don't know if Sergio, you want to start with that, or anybody else really?
Yeah, I think I think we all have heard some stories about that. People that couldn't qualify to become real life pilots and just got a sim and start doing that. And I think it became even easier, and that's one of the upsides of the Xbox version of Microsoft Flight Simulator, because a lot of those guys cannot use the regular gear that we have for some reason. They have reduced use of their feet or legs or something like that, and perhaps a gamepad helps them. So even there, the Xbox version is just absolutely amazing for people that love aviation, that want to fly the world. They cannot do it in real life, but they can do it virtually. And with the scenery that Microsoft Flight Simulator now offers, oh man, that's just fantastic. I was listening to Jörg Neumann the other day talking about the fact that he had been doing some virtual tourism with Microsoft Flight Simulator since he couldn't go anywhere. Right, so it was just virtually flying around in Microsoft Flight Simulator and getting to know other places. Earlier today, Drew Bolton, you guys know him as Bell Geode, sent him a screenshot of some helipads near the Giza pyramids, and it was really cool to see that, and to see that Microsoft is improving the world and improving the experience for everyone. And the pyramids have been looking great since the beginning. But Black Shark has been improving the algorithms and everything behind that does the autogen, if you want to call it, for the whole world. And it's just more and more impressive. And these folks that cannot get their license in real life, this is an escape for them. And it's absolutely fantastic for them. I'm really glad that they have the chance. Yeah.
Xbox is extremely big into accessibility. They actually have a dedicated controller, the Xbox Adaptive Controller, that it's like super customizable, and it's made like especially for people with special needs of any kind. And it's used a lot for Flight Simulator, because people that can't use a joystick or whatever, they can use that for simming. And the fact that also the Flight Simulator has a lot of as very, very flexible assists helps a lot there too.
Yeah. You remember, Calum, probably when we went to the global preview event back in 2019, the event that you were talking about in the beginning. One of the things that Microsoft said right there was that they wanted the simulator to be inclusive. That was one of the things that they wanted the simulator to have, and they are doing just that. And actually, this is another thing that people fear with the fact that there's an Xbox version. There's a dumbed down version of the sim somehow, right? And all of a sudden, this is not going to be a sim anymore because they have a dumbed down version. Yeah, well, I don't know if you heard, but there's a dumbed down version of helicopters for the sim. Sebastian Vlok has shown it so that people can use it on Xbox, for example. And it's not because of that I'm going to be afraid that helicopters are not going to be good in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Yeah, I'm not saying they are going to be spectacular. I hope they are. I don't know how they are yet. I haven't tried them, unfortunately. But the thing is, I'm really glad that they have a dumbed out version that people can use their gamepads with, or they can use it on the PC, but have a better experience and not give up on flying any kind of aircraft, actually, because they can try the sim and they can progress from there. None of us, I don't think any of us here in the panel has started flying the sims and just knew exactly what they were doing from the beginning, unless Evan has done it,
No,
has taken his license and
my
then
sim was before
yeah,
flying, so I was
no, so
I was the worst one for this. I totally came on and did zero research and was like a menace on
Mhm.
on Vatsim before someone put me in my place.
Wow.
So yeah,
it took me literally years to get
Yeah.
any good at flight simulation because all I wanted to do was just fly around, and there were a lot
yeah,
of concepts. There were some basic concepts that I knew, but there were a lot of concepts that I didn't know. And it wasn't until I think 2002, something like this. So I already had a few years of flight simulation. Remember that I think it was the FS 2002 professional edition that came with a PDF with Rod Machado's lessons. And that PDF, I actually, sometimes I send that PDF to some people. That PDF actually taught me a lot of things that I didn't know about aviation back then, right? So it took me some time to get, and I'm not saying I'm good, but at least better at flight simulation. And everyone needs that. Everyone needs to take that path. If Microsoft is doing something that will help them achieve that faster or easier or achieve it at all, because some guys give up. I know of people that has given up on flight simulation at all, right? If we have the tools and we have a good community that fosters that passion and helps them, we may have amazing people in the community in a few years. But we do need to do our part as a
yeah,
community.
for sure.
100%.
I want to just talk.
Just a quick,
Yeah, go ahead, Cal.
just quickly add. That I think that accessibility question is really good, and a few other examples of accessibility we have in the sim. I know we talked a lot about controllers and stuff, but the different languages, plentiful languages now, which is again so much more inclusive. It helps people to get involved. Subtitles, something very simple, but again very useful, and kind of the audio descriptions and the fact you can change the colors on lots of things, again, is all part of that accessibility stuff. And as Giuseppe said, Xbox and Microsoft are huge in accessibility, and in fact the whole gaming industry is kind of heading in that kind of trajectory of enabling a lot more of that. So the more we can do that, the better. And I mean, Evan, I think you had I don't remember their name, but you had
Yeah, Sarah at the
a blind,
show who is blind,
that's it, yeah.
who can fly, and she not only flies, but she flies on Vatsim with air traffic controllers. That's in P3D or FSX, maybe it might be FS. No, I think it's some combination of those two because it still uses that infrastructure Sim Connect to be able to actually interface with the sim. But actually there was someone there who wasn't officially there as part of Microsoft, but is on the Microsoft team, who instantly approached her and basically said, listen, we want to be able to build this into future editions of Microsoft Flight Simulator as well. So even blind pilots can participate and even participate on Vatsim, which is incredible. Yeah. I want to ask about Vatsim because that came up in the chat, and then we'll probably wrap up. So have you all used Vatsim before, the three of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you guys can talk to this as well, and of course I can as well since I'm a controller on there. But you could basically parlay this whole conversation onto the Vatsim ATC versus pilot conversation, and there's certainly, I think Vatsim still has a ways to go on breaking down that barrier a little bit. And there's a lot of people who are pilots who say they got yelled at, or the controllers are difficult. There's a lot of controllers who would say that the pilots don't know enough. There's a huge wall there, I think, that they need to try and break down. But a couple people kind of made the comment that said, like, I'm a bit nervous about getting on Vatsim, or I've heard that the controllers can be mean, or I've heard that the pilots can be mean. So could you guys just talk briefly about that before we kind of get wrapped up here?
Um,
And if you guys don't
so
want to do it, I'll take it. But
Yeah, I do have an idea, and I think that the Flight Simulation Association could have a role on this.
okay,
I'm
So
just
you're putting that on me.
threw
Well,
you under the bus.
Well, we're
tell
already doing
us.
some of that, so that's good. I mean, we're doing a pilot briefing webinar for Cross the Pond on October 15th. So actually, I think we are helping on that front. Callum, are you going to say something before I jump in and talk about it a little bit?
yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I've been simming for years before I had the courage to jump onto Vatsim.
Yeah,
It took years and years. It's daunting, the idea, the prospect of
yeah,
me taking myself online, talking to people, and frankly pretending I know what I'm doing because I don't want to mess up and cause a riot, basically. But I think it all comes down to it's kind of skill and patience from both sides. I think it's equal in that respect. I think pilots need to have some degree of knowledge of the plane they're using, and also have an idea of what they're about to embark on. And certainly not joining Cross the Pond is like their first experience into Vatsim. I think that would be a nightmare. But I think you
Uh,
you just have to kind of take in some information as a pilot, know what you're doing, and spend time just listening to kind of ATC, and jumping on as an observer was the most beneficial thing I did, and kind of understanding kind of the pace and the flow and just kind of the etiquette, I guess, of being online on Vatsim, and also just letting people know you're new. I think goes a long way to enabling the controllers and other pilots around you have their expectation. From a ATC perspective, I've definitely had my fair share of controllers have a pop at me for maybe they've had a really stressful session, and I just think if you've had a stressful session, you need to kind of sign off and do something else, just
yeah,
like any other sort of activity you're doing. And again, if you're a new controller, then let the pilots know. So then again, there's some expectation like from both sides. So I think it's equal footing. But I will say if you are brand new to flight simulation, I think you just need to kind of take it all in, watch some stuff on YouTube. There's plenty of videos and stuff that are really, really helpful and give you an idea of what it's like before you really jump in it and try it out yourself. And definitely start at a small airport with maybe only a couple of airplanes rather than trying to jump in at like Heathrow or New York or Boston, for example.
yeah. I'll let you guys. We got one more question,
yeah,
so
well,
I'll let you
like,
guys. I'll let you guys think about this question while I just comment quickly on Vatsim. This question is
like really
how.
quickly.
Yeah, I'll come right back to you. Give me a second. But this
Sorry.
question coming up next is going to be this is a good one, so I want you guys to think about it. How confident are you that MSFS will eventually reach the sim complexity we're used to seeing in P3D, pause at top of descent, weather, the detail of weather, the fidelity of the add-ons? So just think about that for a second. I'm going to talk quickly on Vatsim, and I'll just say to those people in the chat who had those comments about feeling a bit nervous, the fact that you're saying that already tells me that you're ready to go. The people who cause and I don't want to say problems. So the people who usually prompt that reaction from a controller are people who have done zero reading, zero research. They probably downloaded the sim 3 days ago. They come into the busiest event on the network's history, and they expect to do VFR close traffic at the international airport, right? Those are the people who cause that kind of reaction. If you're not that person, if
Can
you
I
put your
declare
hand up,
emergency?
yeah, exactly. So if you put your hand up and say you're new, honestly, you will have no problems. There are, as Callum says, there's some great resources. You can go on Twitch and YouTube. You can literally watch people fly online or control online and experience that for yourself, just basically vicariously through them. And yes, we do have a number of webinars. You can go back and look at our webinar on Vatsim. We have one coming up on October 15th where we talk about Cross the Pond. But honestly, at some point, you've got to get over that ledge and dive in. If you're someone who just comes on the network, put in your flight plan, hey, I'm a little bit new to the network, and you say to the first controller that you talk to, hey, I'm new to the network, and then you make your transmission, you'll have absolutely no problems. And anyone who gives you any grief at that point, that's on them and not on you. So there's my little Vatsim rant, and I see in the chat here Phil's asking for comments. So if you have anything that you think we could do to make the Vatsim thing a little bit easier, please put those in the chat. Giuseppe, you were going to do a quick follow up on the Vatsim thing, I think.
Just I
Yeah.
think it would be nice to have a little bit more like private-ish training. Webinars are a little bit like, but they are a bit one-sided. If there was more chances to like train people directly, would be very nice.
Yep, and that
I know
exists.
there are some of those things, but
Yeah.
more of that would be nice. Yeah, it exists, but I think it would be nice to have more of that because people are intimidated to go in the live environment. It's
Yeah.
super intimidating.
So if people want that, two names that I can drop right now. One of them is Flight Sim Coach. So they do one-on-one coaching, and if you're an FSA captain, you actually get an hour with them for free. So if you're a captain and you're watching and you want to get on Vatsim, you can literally reach out to Flight Sim Coach. You get an hour with an instructor who can walk you through Vatsim or Pilot Edge or Iveo or any of the online networks, and that would be a great place for you to start. And the other one is called Vatstar, Vatstar, and they provide free sort of like same thing, one-on-one coaching with you for getting started with Vatsim, and they can do everything from like getting started on the network to actually learning how to fly, which is quite cool. So Vatstar and Flight Sim Coach are two resources that come to mind, and we could do a whole other webinar on that one, but I want to get back to that one last question that came through
Maybe
on
you
the
should.
FSElite YouTube. Yeah, well, I think we should. You're right. And good thing we have one coming up on October 15th, so put that in your calendars.
Yay.
But let's go back and talk about that one last question. So the question was, how confident are you that MSFS will eventually reach the sim complexity that we're used to seeing in P3D? Or maybe you think we're already there. I'll let you guys just jump on that one and then let's go.
I mean, I think I understand the question, but I'm also I think we've exceeded the complexity of P3D from many. I'm not sure if this person means the add-ons that we're experiencing or the fact maybe. So I think maybe the biggest thing that is missing from MSFS at the minute is a functional weather radar,
Yeah,
or the
or
ability
weather
for
engine
third
even.
parties to tap into that. But I mean, we've got high fidelity short haul aircraft at the minute from both big manufacturers. We've got a superb looking ground generation system that implements aerial imagery from around the world and also 3D photogrammetry. The SDK has been constantly updated and is doing things that we've never seen before in any flight sim. And the whole thing looks gorgeous in comparison to 3D. I mean, I used P3D a couple of weeks ago for some stuff, and I'm like, oof, looks like mud. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, that is old stuff in comparison. So I think we've exceeded the complexities in some regards. I think there's still one or two little things, but I also think maybe it's just an element of change and people needing to, if you're moving from a platform to another platform for whatever reason, then just accept that things have moved on since P3D was made. And let's face it, that was also based on kind of almost 15, 16, 17-year-old technology. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly.
that's my brief take on it anyway.
Giuseppe, do you want to comment and we'll finish up?
I think, like, I'm sure there is different opinions on whether we have overtaken, or whether like MSFS has overtaken. I don't want to go too much into the sim versus sim thing or not, but in the end, whether you think it has overtaken it already or not, if you look at the progression MSFS has done in 2 years, I think there is absolutely no doubt that with the kind of it's just a matter of resources. Asobo has 100 something developers in it, plus people at Microsoft and whatever. They have the resources to do things that unfortunately or fortunately other developers cannot do. So in the end, it will absolutely close the gap and go to levels where we've probably never seen from Satellite Simulator, because there has never been before in history, even the old Microsoft Flight Simulator never had this kind of resources behind it, just human developer programmer resources. So the kind of resources Asobo has for this simulator is absolutely unprecedented. So we definitely can expect like things to be done, gaps to be closed, and whatever.
Sergio, any last comments on that from you?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I never like to answer these questions and do any futurology because things can change. We don't know what companies are going to be going through. We just don't know the future. But just like Giuseppe was saying, and Calum, we're talking P3D is a platform that came from FSX, which was released in 2007, so 15 years ago. And it was under development for much longer than that. So again, 16 or 17, like Calum was saying. Microsoft Flight Simulator has been in development for 8 years. So when we went to the global preview event, they told us that the sim was in development for 5 years. And a year has come, the sim came out, and two more years went through. So we are at 8 years of development. And we have an absolutely fantastic piece of software. Is it flawed? Yes, it's not finished. Is it broken? Yeah, it has some stuff that is broken. We have a much more or a much bigger awareness of what's broken, because let's face it, it's the sim with the most amount of people playing it, using it right now. A year ago, half a year ago, we had about 3.5 million users just on PC. Then the Xbox version came out. And I would say that probably by now we have, I don't know, 5 million users. Of course, there are some guys. Do you see 5 million guys complaining on the forums that they have issues with Microsoft Flight Simulator? Sometimes, I see this a lot. People going, oh, this sim sucks. Everyone is complaining. We have about 5 million guys using it. You see how many different guys complaining. Do you see 100 guys complaining? If you go to all the forums and all the groups and you count them up, are they even 100 guys? Are they what, 20, 30 guys?
Sometimes if you go on the official forums, they kind of feel like 5 million people complaining.
Yeah, it does. Those forums are really, are chaotic. But let's say that we have let's say we have 1,000 guys complaining out of about 5 million. That's not a bad number, right? So we have an amazing piece of software. It didn't surpass P3D in some areas because it's under development. Everyone's complaining about ATC. Hey, there's a sim that it's on version 12. It's almost as old as FSX, older actually, and it has problems with ATC, right? So there are some issues. I am very hopeful about the future of Microsoft Flight Simulator. I believe Giuseppe said it right. They have all the right resources. They have a lot of companies around it. It's not just Azobo. It's not just Microsoft. They have amazing partnerships. They have amazing connections with aircraft manufacturers. A lot of companies around the world. I'm using this as an example because this is what I know. So it's not just because it's helicopters, but it's because I know that this is happening. Sebastian Vlok, the CEO of Azobo, the guy that's working on the flight dynamics for the sim, and he's working on the Gimbal Cabra G2. He's actually flying the helicopter with instructors from Gimbal, the manufacturer. They are getting their feedback. So they are going above and beyond in trying to get this sim the best they can. Yeah, there are some broken stuff. It's software development. Something has to break. It's like, it's a law. It's not, a lot of people think that computer development or software development it's always very strict, and it's not. Stuff breaks. Stuff breaks. So I am really expecting to see Microsoft Flight Simulator evolving a lot and bringing some amazing stuff in the future. It's already there. I think it will get better.
Calum or Giuseppe, last thoughts as we close up here.
I'm just gonna say that, like, if you look at what we have now, and we can easily say that, I don't think anyone could say that's not true. This is one of the most complex commercial software pieces that you can buy nowadays. So yeah, as Sergio said, it's bound to have something that's not perfect after 2 years on the market. So we have to keep that in mind, and also learn to provide feedback in a more like balanced manner, I think, because we have to understand that they are really doing kind of miracles with the fact that Asobo is working. Like 2 years ago, we didn't have what we have now. When Microsoft Flight Simulator launched, it wasn't even fraction of what we have now. And in 2 years from now, it's going to be like even better. So, and
Yeah.
they say they're going to support this for 10 years at least. So just imagine what this is going to become.
Yeah, I just want to echo what they've been saying. If you've asked me 3.5 years ago what type of where we would be now in the industry, I would never have guessed we would have had this sim. And you also have to consider that Microsoft and Asobo take on this feedback. I mean, I've had numerous discussions with many members of the team, and every time you speak to them, they're like, "Yep, we know, we're aware, we're working on it." Sometimes things just take a little bit longer than what we would like it to take, and we've seen a perfect example of that in Sim Update 10. I know it was frustrating for people that it was delayed and delayed and delayed, but it was delayed because it wasn't ready yet. I know also on the same spectrum, people complain that they just delayed it and they could have just released it anyway, but then they would say it was more broken. But anyway, I digress. But I think the point being is that they are listening and that they are trying. And in November, we're going to get a massive update with helicopters and an
Gliders.
A310,
A310, yes.
A300, sorry,
Gliders as
completely
well.
for free.
A310.
Is it? Oh, I'm so tired, jet lag.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point being, they are clearly listening. They're improving this sim. They haven't abandoned it, and I'm very excited about what the future holds for Microsoft Flight Sim on both PC and on Xbox.
Very good. And that's an excellent way to wrap things up. So thank you all for a wonderful conversation, to the chat for some great comments and questions all the way through. Appreciate all of that. As we wrap up here, a couple of quick reminders for everybody. We are back on September the 28th, and this was a webinar request that came up from a number of our members, basically saying, look, we have a sim, or I have a sim. What the heck do I do with it now? This is especially for those who might be real world pilots or they're student pilots. They've heard all the benefits of flight simulation, but you're going, I could do so many things and it's overwhelming, or it's like, I don't know where to start. And so we're tackling those questions with Mike from Flight Sim Coach. He's a real world flight instructor. He's also a flight simmer, and he does this kind of one-on-one coaching with people. So he's bringing that to us in webinar format. That's September the 28th at 8 Eastern. And like I was talking about earlier, on October the 15th, we are also coming back to talk Vatsim and cross the pond and do what we were talking about earlier, try to make things a little bit easier for people who are getting into Vatsim, maybe flying across the pond for the first time. So please mark those in your calendars. You can find all the information on that and more at flightsimulationassociation.com. Big thanks to Sergio, Calum, and Giuseppe for a great conversation. To all of you for watching, that's it from us. Have a great night.